Productive Dentist Academy podcast network.
Welcome to the Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. I'm Regan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, Dr. Maggie Augustyn, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take into your own dental practice. If you are ready to reclaim your time so you can focus on great patient care without sacrificing yourself along the way, buckle up and listen in.
No, it is an emotional hurdle because they've built something so they put their blood, sweat, and tears into for so many years that it's like selling a baby.
Welcome to another episode of Everyday Practices. I am here with my beautiful co-hosts, Dr. Chad Johnson and Dr. Maggie Augustyn. You just heard from Angela Golden, our guest today, who has kicked us off. Chad and Maggie, before we bring Angela fully in, how are you both doing today? What are you excited about on this episode?
It's been a week, so it'll be nice to maybe transition from dealing with leadership and fantasize about walking away from this gnarly teenager.
That is the dental practice?
That is the dental practice.
For me personally, I've been in a position in the last year or so that I'm so frustrated. I'm just like, I don't even care about selling it. I'm just looking to maximize what I have right now and worry about that later. And that might resonate with some people because it's just like I'm enough associates in, and I feel like I'm inadequate as a leader, and or that they just want to learn and run. And so that's always tough too. And all those factors play into, what if I didn't sell it? What if I just, went to the end of my lease and just said, you know what? Anyone want any extra paper or computer supplies? Get a keyboard if you want, because I'm closing on Friday. Screw this. So I've been through the whole range of emotions, but that's kind of where I sit currently. And so when I saw this coming up, Angela, I was excited to walk through that, as you had mentioned earlier, with the psychological counseling of it all. So can you first start us off by telling us you're SEPA certified and what exactly that means, so that way the listeners can know the context of what in the world is he talking about?
And who the heck is Angela?
Yes.
Well, to start off with, I am Angela, and I am a certified exit planning advisor who helps dentists. I focus specifically on dental practices and growing the value of their practice before they sell. And as I spoke earlier about selling your baby, when I bought a practice back in a few years ago, I put my whole heart, soul, everything I had. My husband and I spent weekends in there, spent the whole shutdown time during COVID remodeling, and everything that we did, it was just like, oh, now what do I do?
I didn't even realize that you were a practice owner, Angela.
Yes, I was.
What were some of the signals that you saw, during those frustrating times too? What were some of the signals that you were like, okay, I'm thinking about an exit here? Whether it is I'm, on one end of the spectrum, I'm super frustrated and ready to go open up a Quiznos, all the way over to, this is my baby and I really care about this, which we know it's hashtag complicated. We know how business ownership goes.
And the emotional aspect of it is your team. You've built a team around you that has become part of your family. You've got your patients who have also become such dear friends, and, in my opinion, they were part of my family as well. So I had such deep relationships with everybody. And that's when I discuss exit planning with doctors, there's the value of the practice, but there's also the value of the intangible assets or the intellectual property that you have. And that is your, we call them the 4 C's, but that's your human capital, that's your employees. Your patients are your customer capital, your structural capital, which is all of the insides of the practice, and then your social capital, which is all of your reviews, what patients say about you, your social media following, all of that. So those are the types of things that when you're looking at exiting your practice and increasing the value of the practice before you exit is really honing in on those 4 things and making those things as the most value. Because there's one of the things that I learned in my CEPA certification was that 80% of business value is in those 4 intangible assets.
Which one of those assets with all the dentists that you've worked with is the biggest gap to close?
That would be the customer capital.
Really? Tell me more. Why?
Well, it's kind of equal between human capital and customer capital. Your customer capital, how many active patients do you have in your practice? And how many of those active patients are not scheduled right now? So reactivation is huge when it comes to increasing the value of your practice. It's reactivation, re-engagement, those kind of things they work hand in hand with getting more treatment on the books, more production, more collection. That's all going to increase the value. The human capital is if a person's going to want to buy your practice, are your employees and the systems that you have in place sellable?
Tell us what makes it sellable. This is exciting to me because it is so intangible. It is so humans are, it's messy. And so that to me is like you're putting a system around this. This is exciting.
Yeah. So you look at, for instance, your hygienists. Your hygienists most practices when you sell, they want to keep your staff because your staff has the relationships with the patients. For instance, your hygienists, they see the patients every 3 to 6 months. They know their names, they know their families, they have that actual relationship. The dental assistants have the same relationship with the patients. They know them, and anybody who wants to buy into a practice or buy that practice wants to keep as many of those key employees so that you have that relationship that the patients are used to. But with that said, you also have to build the relationship with the outside world and the potential patients that you could have and the potential employees that you could have. So it's something about building those, the relationships with everybody and really honing in on what the risk factors are and making sure that the patients understand that so that the philosophy of cares can be intertwined with whoever's going to buy the practice.
Let's step back for a minute because I think the way that we traditionally have looked at selling a practice has been, we practice for a fair amount of time or until we are too tired or until we hurt ourselves. And then we sell our practice. And generally when that happens, we sell the practice at a time when it's not worth a whole lot, meaning that practice has reduced in value or at least is generally not an investment that we have relied on in our portfolio, at least. But there's a different way of doing this. There's a way of creating value in our practice and considering that an investment in our portfolio. Talk to us about how to do that and when to consider walking away, or maybe not, maybe that's not the right term of putting it. Talk to us about exiting our practice as owners in preserving as much value in it so that we walk away with those coffers filled as much as they can be.
When I meet with the doctors, I do a few assessments, and obviously I do evaluation of the practice and where it's at now and where the potential of through these assessments where it could potentially be, and whether you sell to a private owner or a private equity or a DSO or something else, there's all these different ways to look at it. So then, with that being said, I take you through a journey of what your life's going to look like after you exit. What are the things that you're wanting to achieve? Are you going to do missions? Are you going to go tour the world? What's your plan? Are you going to golf every day? Because a lot of doctors don't have a plan. They don't know what they're going to do. And they just think, I'm going to practice dentistry till I die because I don't have any other hobbies. And there's so many dentists that are that way. They don't have any other hobbies. Their practice has engulfed their entire life. So when they think about exiting, they need to have a plan. They need to have a vision. And then we need to fund that vision. And how are we going to do that?
So, thinking along those lines, if I'm trying to think of how to describe it, but social media, I think, has a good and a bad within the context specifically of the pressure of retiring with X dollars. And I think there's how to describe it. There are some who need to retire with a lot of money because they sure know how to spend it. And then there are others that could retire quite comfortably and live easy because they just spend frugally. And but on Facebook, for example, you see people, like, oh, I'm going to try and retire with 20 million and stuff like that. And then indirectly or directly, that can cause pressure. I mean, I don't have 20 million. Should I retire with 20 million? How could I even get 2 million, let alone 20 million? And then you go, wait a second. This guy has a $5 million home in Miami, and he's got $100,000 of equity into it. And here I'm in Iowa, and I might have more of my home paid for and plan to just mow my lawn and take walks through the neighborhood, and that doesn't cost as much as taking your yacht out from your $1 million dock. So are there surprises to some dentists when they go, I actually don't need a lot of money? Because it seems as though a lot of times the pressure is you'll need more than you expect, but it's like, is it ever like you might actually need less than you'd expect?
Yeah, exactly. And through the assessments that I go through with the doctors, I talk about with them, are you going to be taking care of your family? Your mother, are you going to need to put her in a care facility? How much is that going to cost a month? And going through different steps. The first step is de-risking yourself. The next step is preparing yourself. And those two steps kind of intertwine a little bit because
what do you mean by preparing yourself?
Preparing yourself financially and emotionally.
Okay.
Ooh, emotionally.
So when I first started this podcast with you, we talked about selling your baby because that is exactly what you're doing. You've put your life into this. And you want what's best for your baby, right? But you also want what's best for yourself emotionally. And so a lot of times we have to prepare, de-risk and then prepare. And then we decide, are we going to keep it?
Is there a good time to start talking to someone? I'm almost 50, and I don't plan on stopping to practice dentistry. I don't want to sell my practice either.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to transition out. When should I talk to someone like you?
Well, I feel, this is my own opinion, that exit planning is business planning because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow.
I can't say enough about this is for any time in your life. And yes, full disclosure, we all know that I don't own a dental practice and I won't own a dental practice. It doesn't matter whether you own a dental practice or not. Knowing your why and your purpose and where you're going, the universe in and of itself starts to align you to that. And I met with my financial advisor several years ago. So I'm in my 40s for my full disclosure. And he helped me through an exercise that sounds eerily similar, Angela, to where I wanted to go. And Chad, to your point, the why that sits underneath. Why do you want 20 million? I don't think it actually matters the number that you have. It's the why and the purpose. That is what drives me anyway. And I think that's what drives humans. So I said the same thing, not with the money, but I said, okay, I'm going to retire when I'm 53 because my son will be graduating and and he was like, okay, well, tell me what retirement means to you, Angela. So he started saying, what hobbies do you want to do? What kind of lifestyle do you want? How many vacations do you want to take? All of those, it was the best exercise ever because what I discovered was, I don't really want to retire. I just don't want to work like 5 days a week. I'm never going to not be passionate, Maggie, like you with the dental practice. Like I'm never not going to want to be doing something, but my lifestyle will change. So we talked about the purpose and the why. And now this many years in, I'm so happy when I get on a call with him. And I have a father and a father-in-law, two wildly different outcomes for their lives and their retirement lifestyles that run the gamut of, wanting to do things versus being frugal. It's what you want. And it's crafting that. And then to me, I don't know about you, Angela. And so this is leading up to a question in that when they discover that purpose and get to their why, does the emotional hurdles, like the bridge over into planning, become easier for them? For me, it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it gives them a purpose of what their goal is. I mean, you have to have a purpose. And when you actually write it down, it's like having a vision board. This is what that vision board is going to look like after I sell my practice or after I hire an associate and cut back to 2 days a week instead of 5 days a week. It's just incrementally, this is where I'm going to go. It might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, it might be 20 years. But planning that and getting that vision is what's really, really important.
So tell us an example, Angela. So if someone didn't prepare properly, and have the glide path, the runway, to land the plane properly, what did that end up costing them, or how did that difficulty play out?
Well, I've worked with so many dentists over the last 30 years, but I've seen some dentists that will practice until they're 80 because they didn't have a plan. They didn't have a purpose of what was going to happen after. I've also seen where the doctor is riding his bike in Lake Tahoe and all of a sudden died of a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
Going through that whole phase with the doctor's husband and children and what are we going to do now? That's a whole thing. And if we're not prepared now and we have a plan in place of what could happen and a vision in place for the future, it aligns it all together.
Cool.
How does that plan change? So let's say, somebody has an unfortunate accident. How does that exit plan change that situation? Let us see that.
Okay. For instance, I'm working with a doctor now going through an exit planning sessions, the little assessments that I do with them and the questionnaires that I go with them. I sat down with his wife and asked her these questions. I said, what if this happened? What would we do tomorrow? And we lined it out. We made a plan for her and I that if something was to happen to him, this is the roadmap we're going to go on. So we have it written down. If something happens to her, if something happens to him, her son has it written down. We have a plan. And those are the things that I find that the doctors and the doctors' spouses really, really need is they just need to know that there's a plan and there's support and they aren't going out this all by themselves
Mm-hmm.
because you never know. I mean, we've all known those doctors and that something happens tragically or they're disabled, something happened and did they have a plan? Now we have a plan in place and we know where we're going and it's just like you have a book this is going to be your book that's going to guide you through it. And that's what we want to see.
I'm curious how you walk them through the process that kind of bridges the emotional and philosophical why over to the data. So you get them to visualize and get that plan in place. And then there's the data that has to back it up, the numbers of it. What are some of the red flags that you see typical? Speaking of the doctor that had to work to 80, that you help them identify and then, work through to close the gap again.
I could get a little bit emotional about this because I have worked with that doctor that worked until his very last day of when he passed away. And my biggest thing is to get the doctors to realize that there is life after dentistry. There really is. You have a family, you have your passions, you have so many other things to look forward to in life, and there is life after dentistry. And knowing that, 90, I think Victoria says 95% of dentists can't retire financially. Let's make it happen so they can, because I don't want to see that for any of them.
So there's psychology that plays into this. So I'm curious if someone makes a plan, how often is it executed well? Because here's my thought is, you have, let's say 100 dentists and they all make a plan with you. Do 60 out of the 100 end up, satisfied with their plan? Because this is kind of tough. You'd almost have to longitudinally to get a real answer, but like I was wondering what your gut reaction is after 10 years, have them fill out some kind of survey saying, are you happy with how you ran that plan? Because I mean, stuff happens and things change, and that kind of goes back to Victoria's evergreen planning of, business strategy and stuff like that. Your thoughts, Angela?
It's every 90 days we need to reevaluate every.
Oh, okay.
Because so many things change in life. You have babies, you get divorced, you never know. So we have to always be updating and changing the plan, and that's where the strategy comes in of, something. Let's say you have a house fire. It's the same kind of thing. We have to have a plan for that too. So it's every 90 days, just re-engaging, re-asking the same questions over what has changed in your life and where do we need to adjust this.
Mm-hmm.
You get what you focus on, right? I mean, if you don't stay on top of it, or if you lose, it's just too easy to get back into complacency and to think that something. I think so many times, or at least for me, I'll just want to hit that automate button, so I can focus on other things. And so to have a guide alongside me to remind me, and that that cadence, that quarterly cadence is incredible. I do have a deeper question for you. We talked about the 80-year-old doctor, and that sounds to me like that's fueling your why, but you also went through the process yourself. What drives you to help people through this? Why do you care about other dentists?
I have been there. I've seen so many situations where it completely destroys your relationships with your family, your relationships with your team, and it can completely destroy you emotionally. And I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes, and I went through it myself. It completely destroyed me. And I felt like I've given up everything I've worked so hard for. Why am I doing this? And I don't want other people to feel that pain. Honestly, I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
something that really tugs at my heart because I've been there personally, but I've also sat next to the widow of the doctor that I worked with for so many years and was like, how are we going to get through this? And that's what my goal is to help everybody that I can get through one of life's most challenging and most impactful events of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you begin to design these plans with your doctors and you kind of have this in place, the way that I can relate to this is over COVID, my husband and I decided to put together a will, and we hadn't before. I can't get life insurance, and we finally sat down and we hired an attorney to do that. And I felt like I could sleep better at night afterwards. Do you see a change in the doctors that you work with once you put this kind of plan in place? Do you see an ease in them, perhaps in their spouses, and the people that are around them, in that, okay, this is taken care of. I can go on, breathing a little bit lighter as a result of having this safety net, knowing that if these things don't go to plan, and this is worst case scenario, my family will know how to maneuver through these really difficult moments.
Yes, absolutely. It's like a weight has been lifted off of their shoulders, and you can see it, you can feel it, and you can hear it in their voice. So it's very impactful when they know that they have a strategy, they know that they have it all comes together for them, and they're just like, oh, I can sleep at night now. I know how I'm going to pay my bills. I know how I'm going to get through all of this. And I have a plan that I'm going to keep revisiting every 90 days that I know I can make work.
All right. So someone comes and says, I have 20 years left to practice. When should we talk? What's your ideal answer?
Today.
And the question that you would pose to that person would be, what are your hobbies? When do you want to stop working?
No, I would want my very first thing would be to know, in 20 years, what do you need to have in place? What do you need? I want to know what their vision is for the next 20 years. What are they going to be doing after that 20 years? I want to know, are they going to fund their child's college? Are they going to pay for all the weddings? I need to start planning that ahead of time. And I need to start budgeting for him or her to get that in line for that 20-year exit. It's making sure that we have all things in place for no matter what, we can do it today or we can do it in 20 years.
I'm wondering if we can talk some successes that you've had. First of all, it's the best. I mean, your purpose is to make sure that people don't have to experience what you experienced, which to me is the epitome of a hero's journey. A good story is when bad things happen to good people. A great story is when bad things happen to heroes. And they can turn around and hold out a hand and say, I'm going to help you through this. So it's so opposite of the victim mindset, because bad things happen to everybody. That's just the reality of it. Intentionally or unintentionally, you're going to step in a pile sometimes. So through this process and the clients that you've helped, what are some successes that that make you feel particularly great?
Well, I think this is a success. I had a doctor call a few weeks ago and asked me, he said, I want to get into coaching because I'm going to try to exit in 5 years. And I said, okay, let's go through some numbers and plans and what went through his valuation. And I said, this is where you are right now. And if you do this is what kind of value you would get for a private practice sale today. Or if you went with this option, it would be this. And he looked at me and he said, Angela, now I have to rethink everything. I didn't think my practice was that valuable. I didn't think I would be able to. So now I have to rethink this because my wife wants to retire tomorrow. She's my office manager. I want to keep working for 3 years. Now I have to rethink everything.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going back and looking at different situations because his mind shifted all of a sudden. And that's where it all starts, is when you start thinking about, okay, this is where I'm at now and this is where I could be. Your mind shifts and you start thinking about things differently. And that's where we start really, really diving deep into things.
So was his practice more valuable than he thought?
It was almost 3 times more valuable than he thought.
No way. Normally, I think the story is the opposite. They think it's worth more, and then they're like, it's not worth as much.
Yeah, I've seen that too. We had a client who he wanted to sell his practice and get out from under the headache. But then when I went through his valuation with him and I said, okay, this is where we're at. Financially, you need to increase your EBITDA a little bit more. For the next 2 years, let's really focus on this part. And closing these little gaps that we have in the practice, closing what I call the financial gaps in the practice and in his personal financial life. We had to close those gaps before his EBITDA would be at a selling point. And I've checked it in with him. I check in with him every 90 days, see where he's at, where we're at now.
So what did he, like, you just highlighted again another intangible, like, undercurrent that sits is what's the real story? Okay, well, the real story is a surprise, number one, right? Like, oh, it's worth more. But the real story underneath is his wife wants to exit now. He wants to keep practicing. So how do you traverse that? Because to me, that's a stronger motivator than, the actual numbers. The numbers play a very important part, but how do you navigate that?
Well, then we talk about different situations. Like, for instance, if he was to sell to a DSO, his wife is the office manager right now. So that would be an option for him that would take care of him possibly staying in practice, in dentistry and still being able to work, but his wife would be able to retire. She would not have to be in the office. So we talked through that a little bit. We talked through his daughter is also a dentist, and if she was to come in and take over the practice. We talked about just, having an associate come in and take on a few days for him. That way him and his wife can go do retirement things while he's still working. So there's all different avenues that we have to talk through, and that's why getting to know their goals and their vision is so important. And that I always want to include the spouse in these conversations because that's a huge driver in your decision making.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is really fascinating because as somebody who engages coaching myself, but from the dental perspective, like there's lots of different coaches or guides or advisors that you can engage in. And to me, it is a little confusing. Like who do we go for what? There's financial advisors. There's the SEPA. So the exit planning, like Chad and Maggie are both asking when is the right time to start? And if the answer is today, do I have a SEPA for 90 days for the rest of my life? How do you help people like sort or what advice would you have for them on which type of guidance to like engage in? To me, it would be confusing. I wouldn't know which route to take or if it's a combination.
Yeah, it's a combination actually because as a certified exit planning advisor, I work a lot side by side with your financial advisor, getting those numbers and details of everything that they have already planned and put in place. I also work side by side with your CPA, making sure that you're profitable, making sure that we're paying off debt on time and where we can move money this way, that way. And so I intertwine with all of them. And then also with the business coach or the team development coaches on building that intangible asset of your team and your patient care and getting all of that. It's working. I work with all three so that we are all on the same page, but we're driving forward.
This feels so ignorant on my part, but sometimes ignorance comes to the best conclusions.
That's right. The best
So-
questions.
Yeah. Victoria, who is Productive Dentist Academy CEO, she always says success requires support. And I've taken that to heart over the years. And so if you've listened to previous episodes, listener, you will know that I have like a healthcare team around me. Like I invest in my health. So I have different types of healthcare providers helping me. And so from the business standpoint of it too, I would sit down and say, what do I budget for this? Like, I know I need help in certain areas, and you've just done a great job of explaining, Angela, how you hook into the different support networks. Is there ever a budget that's recommended for doctors so that they can know how much to allocate? Like for me, I had to kind of figure it out on my own, and I did have to make some sacrifices because I could support myself. Although, I could certainly help myself, and then I would be missing certain, financial commitments. And
Sure.
so I had to figure out what was right for me. Is there any sort of framework or formula or anything that you advise people on what they should spend on their support team?
Well, in dental consulting and coaching industries, it's usually between 5 and 8% of your annual collections. In the actual outside of dentistry world of business, it's a lot higher than that. It's between 8 and 15%. So I think depending on the type of practice you have and where you want to go is the key. It's what is comfortable. You don't want to put yourself under trying to make this vision happen, but you also want to be smart with your money and making sure that you have the proper advice and advisors in your corner. So it's an investment in yourself.
I can't say enough. Understanding where I'm going and understanding my why helped me prioritize. Like it helped me kind of create an algorithm of sorts. And thank you for the number piece of it, right? So the actual percentage of what people do. How do people get in? I guess how do they get in touch with you? But more importantly let's start there, like with the valuation piece of it. Is there any tools or anything that you offer that people could get sort of a snapshot and even start the conversation, even if they don't engage with you? Is there something they can do on their own to get that ball started?
Yeah. At Productive Dentist Academy, I do offer a complimentary value gap assessment to every doctor that is interested. I'm happy to do that for you. It requires me either linking with your QuickBooks or your other software that you use, or you providing me with the numbers that I need, and I will do a complimentary value assessment and tell you where your value gap is.
Can they email you to reach out for that?
Yes, Angela at productivedentist.com.
Thank you. And are you going to be at some events coming up over the summer of 2025 for everyone listening to this?
I will be at the Dentist Money Summit.
Oh, yeah.
In Park City, Utah on June 18th and 19th. I will be at ADOM.
Oh, ADOM's 20th anniversary. And that's in, I don't remember where that's in.
I'm going or Jessica's going, but either way, I'm in contact with them. So.
And Dentist Money Summit is Dentist Advisors, right? That's put on by
Yes.
Dentist Advisors. Excellent.
I went last year to that. That was a blast.
Did you find it valuable?
Yeah, more than I expected. I just didn't know quite what to expect, but I thought, you know what, let's just go and check it out. Yeah.
Well, Angela,
Say that again.
I said we had fun, didn't we, Chad?
Yeah.
thank you for spending the time with us to walk through, understanding what a SEPA is, what is important when you're planning your future, and most importantly, keeping in mind that there's life after dentistry and there are guides that can help you along the way. Chad, how about you? How was this hour for you?
Good. And if I were to surrogately, I'm going to make that an adjective, an adverb. If I were to surrogately offer is get in touch with Angela at productivedentist.com. My thought is, I think we have head knowledge as dentists that this is something we should do, and then actually making it tangible. There's a friction gap, like not wanting to, I don't know, maybe it's even acknowledged that you're that close to being done. Sometimes I've always thought that I wanted to go from 25 to 65, 40 years, just, boom. And there are days and weeks where sometimes I go, I don't know, 55 kind of sounds nice.
Or tomorrow.
Or tomorrow. So yesterday sounds nice. Does anyone want the keys? And so, and then there's other days I go, man, I could do this forever. So it's really tough because I think there's a lot of emotionality to it. It's not just a head knowledge of, well, therefore, when my bank account gets to here, then I'll just put this for sale sign up. There's more to it than that. So Angela, thank you for kind of helping people open their eyes to see that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maggie, how about you?
This hits home for me because I just found out that my next door neighbor, who is a little bit older than me, he is a podiatrist and he owns his own practice. They were about to retire. They have 3 grown kids and grandkids, and he doesn't have much life. He has glioblastoma and he's dying. And so I'm in the middle of writing an article about how we just wait, and we wait for these moments of celebration, and we wait. And this is part of these things that we're waiting for, right? We're waiting to retire, and we push off these things because we're uncomfortable with dealing with them. And these questions of when we will retire, how we will exit, that's all part of a very uncomfortable conversation. We don't want to see ourselves age. Right? It doesn't feel good. Even saying that I'm 50, that doesn't.
No thanks.
Yeah. I'll take the 35 or whatever it is. And then you have your teenage kids laughing at you that you're 50, and that's gross. But so this is important. This is important to force yourself to look at. And that would be one of my parting thoughts.
Been an incredible episode. Angela, again, thank you for your time. Appreciate your insight so much and what you're doing for dentists all over the nation. It's really appreciated. We deserve to hold the clinicians and business owners really well. They got a lot on their shoulders, and it's really nice to be able to lessen that pressure and help them enjoy life. Maggie, I just had conversations with a really close girlfriend of mine about living life today instead of waiting, until your runway is so thin. So everybody, thank you so much. We will put Angela's contact information in the show notes. Again, always, if you would love to leave us a review, we'd sure appreciate it on iTunes or Spotify, or if you want to shoot us an email at any time. I think we're podcast@productivedentist.com. We'd love to hear your feedback and any episode ideas that you would like to hear.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share, or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.